You probably think Amazon got rich by selling you things at low prices. That's true, but it's not the trick. The actual trick is something almost nobody notices hiding inside every single purchase you make. Here's the number that explains it. For years, Amazon barely made any profit at all. Some years, none. Investors watched the company lose money quarter after quarter and kept buying the stock anyway. Why would anyone do that? Because Jeff Bezos wasn't building a store, he was building a machine, and the machine didn't need profit to grow, it needed something else entirely. Let's go back to 2001. Amazon was 3 years past its dot-com boom high and the internet bubble had just burst. Half the online retailers from that era don't exist anymore. Bezos sat down with his team and according to widely reported accounts he sketched a simple loop on a piece of paper. Lower prices bring in more customers attract more sellers mean more products improve the customer experience. And a better customer experience brings in even more customers, round and round it goes. This became known as the flywheel. Think of it like pushing a merry-go-round. The first push is brutal, nothing happens, you strain, you sweat and the thing barely moves, but push it enough times in the same direction and eventually it starts spinning on its own, you barely have to touch it anymore. Here's the part that made Amazon different from almost every other retailer in history. Most stores work like this. You buy inventory, you pay for it, then you wait sometimes for months to sell it to customers. That gap between paying your supplier and getting paid by your customer is called the cash conversion cycle, and for most businesses it's a source of constant financial pressure. Amazon flipped it. Picture this. You order a book on Amazon's website, your card gets charged immediately, but Amazon doesn't pay its publisher for another 30, 60, sometimes 90 days, which means for months at a time, Amazon is sitting on your money before it ever pays for the product you bought. Multiply that across millions of transactions happening every single day, and you get an enormous, constantly refreshing pool of cash sitting in Amazon's accounts, essentially borrowed from its own customers, interest-free. That's the twist most people miss when they talk about Amazon's growth. It wasn't just cheap prices, it was a business that had customers financing its own expansion without realizing it. Why does this matter so much? Because most companies that want to grow have to go find money. They take out loans, they sell shares, they beg venture capitalists for funding and give up ownership in exchange. Amazon didn't need to beg nearly as much because its own sales cycle was quietly generating the cash it needed to build more warehouses, buy more trucks, and hire more people, before the bills for that growth even came due. Here's a question worth sitting with. If your own business or your own finances could somehow get paid before you had to pay your bills, how differently would you operate? Most people live the opposite way. Rent is due on the 1st, paychecks land on the 15th and 30th, credit card bills come due before the next paycheck clears. That mismatched timing is exactly why so many people feel like they're always one step behind, even when their income looks fine on paper. Now here's where Amazon's story takes a turn most explainer videos skip entirely. In 2006, the company launched something that had almost nothing to do with selling products. It was called Amazon Web Services, a way for other companies to rent computing power and storage instead of building their own data centers. At the time, this seemed like an odd detour for an online bookstore. It wasn't. Building Amazon's own retail website required massive amounts of computing infrastructure. Rather than let that infrastructure sit idle during quiet hours, Bezos and his team realized they could rent out the extra capacity to other businesses. It's the same logic as a landlord renting out a spare room. The asset already exists. Why not let it earn money the rest of the time? That decision quietly became one of the most profitable moves in modern corporate history. While Amazon's retail business operated for years on razor-thin margins, sometimes barely breaking even, its cloud computing division became a genuine profit engine, eventually generating a large share of the company's total operating income, even though it represented a much smaller slice of overall revenue. This is the pattern behind almost every major fortune built on infrastructure rather than products. You build something out of necessity, then you realize the thing you built for yourself is valuable to other people too. Suddenly you're not just running one business, you're running two, and one of them barely costs anything extra to operate. What does this mean for the way you think about your own money? It suggests that assets you already own, skills you've already built, or systems you've already set up for your own benefit might quietly be worth more than you realize if you ever stop to ask who else might pay to use them. Back to the flywheel for a moment because there's a counterintuitive twist here too. Standard business advice tells you to protect your profit margins, charge as much as the market allows. Amazon did almost the opposite for 2 decades. Whenever the company found a way to cut costs instead of pocketing the difference, it lowered prices even further, sacrificing short-term profit to keep the flywheel spinning faster. Wall Street analysts spent years questioning this approach, and Amazon's profit margins in its early public years often looked laughably thin compared to traditional retailers. But the strategy wasn't about being profitable today. It was about becoming so large so fast that competitors could never catch up on scale, pricing, or selection. This is a version of a concept economists sometimes call a moat, a competitive advantage so wide that other companies simply can't cross it, no matter how much money they throw at the problem. Here's the practical mirror for your own decisions. Sometimes the smartest financial move isn't maximizing what you take home today. It's reinvesting in whatever creates compounding advantages tomorrow. That could mean building skills that make you more valuable over the next decade, rather than optimizing for the biggest paycheck this year. It could mean choosing an investment account with lower fees today, so more of your money compounds over the next 30 years instead of quietly leaking into someone else's profit margin. So here's the truth. Amazon didn't get rich by selling things cheaply. That was just the visible surface. Underneath, Bezos built a structure where customers unknowingly financed the company's own growth, where spare infrastructure became a second business worth more than the first, and where short-term profit was deliberately sacrificed to make an unstoppable cycle spin faster and faster. Now look at the way money moves through your own life. It's not about finding one great product to sell. It's about noticing the gaps, the spare capacity, and the timing mismatches that are already sitting quietly in your own financial life, waiting for someone to actually pay attention to them.